I love Psalm 104. You can, did anyone know why does that psalm get read on Pentecost? Did you figure it out? There's always a little clue. Come on, who picked up on it? There's literally an exact phrase which was like, oh, yep, now I know why we're reading this one. Fire is my messenger, right, boom, that was a little literal for me, but it made it really clear why we said, oh, this one goes to Pentecost. I have to say, Pentecost readouts are very regional. See, if we were in Atlanta, there'd be a lot of University of Georgia out there right now, and there isn't, and isn't that a beautiful thing? But you're wearing NC State, so we have a little bit of that going on. Psalm 104 is this beautiful ode to how amazing the world is. My favorite piece of Psalm 104 by far is the part where it talks about Leviathan sporting in the waters. The reason I love that is because almost no other place in Scripture is Leviathan treated positively. The Leviathan and the behemoth are the sea and land mythical creatures that represent the dangers of the chaotic potential energy of this world that you and I were not meant to contend with. And if you read, and I recommend it, Job and the tirade God gives out of the whirlwind, which is its own ode to the wonders of creation, God reminds us that while Behemoth and Leviathan are death to us, think Tiamat, think Crash of the Titans, Release the Kraken, they're just playthings to God. They are representations of what differentiate us from God. But I also think there is this amazing, leftover remnant of primordial chaos in a way we need. You see, if you go back to the Genesis story, which we tend to take, we tend to have a couple takeaways. Well, men were created first, so they must be better. God gave us the world so we can do whatever we want with it, and don't talk to snakes. Generally speaking, this is what Western imperialist enlightenment has taught us the Genesis story is to be about, rather than understand it as worship liturgy. And this beautiful ode to the way God, as cosmic parent, tried to create a world that is just enough dangerous and just enough safe for us to survive in the middle of that. And you get that with this daily resuscitation of separating out the light from the night, from the seas of space, from the seas of the primordial oceans, and creating in the midst of this dome a floating sphere of land on which, as long as we stay, as God says in Job, where God marked the edge of the waters and told the ocean, you can come this far but no farther, then we will live. And yet, something about those oceans call to us, do they not? When you stand before the grandeur of the mountains, when you stand at the edge of the seas, when you gaze up into the sky, do you know this? In the month of June, every morning, if the clouds would obey, you will see 5 planets lined up from Mercury through Saturn. All month, 5 planets. The skies have called to us since the dawn of creation. But we can't survive in these places alone, right? And so we have this sphere, this dome, this firmament that's been created, this marking of seas and dry lands, this place we call home, from which we can be grounded, from which we can feel safe. But also this divine spark in us, this air we breathe that curiously calls us into these places of chaotic, creative, potential energy that help us to imagine every day a brave new world lying on the other side of the horizon. When Noah recreates the Genesis creation story and sits in an ark on the seas while it's raining constantly, while creation happens again, is what we are meant to say. And he sends out birds to find if dry land has emerged again from the chaos, right? When they get off the ark, as the story goes, Noah gives God's command to go forth and multiply and scatter over the face of the earth. What do the people do instead? Lonnie, you can speak. They hunker down, right? They're like, that's scary. And so they build a wall to keep themselves on the inside. Not to keep the outside out, to keep them on the inside, like a giant anchor in the dangers of the world to make sure that they will go this far but no farther. And they build that wall higher and higher until we call it the Tower of Babel. And often in Pentecost, we look at the Tower of the Babel story and we say, well, this is where God punished the people by making them speak different languages because otherwise they would aspire to be God, which is a reading that I would contend is a very poor reading of what's really happening. What's really happening is God said, go forth and multiply, become diverse upon the waters of the world, and allow that potential energy to creatively express itself in you in wonder and awe and majesty that reflects the psalmist in Psalm 8 saying, wow! Wonderful are your works, O God, and how amazing that you would care about little old me in the midst of all that. But the people don't want to do it. And so they hunker down. And God says to God's self, I guess I should have saw this coming. I'm going to have to push a little. Who was it? Is it Patty? Patty, you're here somewhere, right? Yeah. Were you who saw the eagles flying, teaching or was it Susan? Anyway, someone once was telling me a story, and I had it in Montana, so that could be about 3 of y'all, about watching for an hour as adult eagles would fly their young up really high and then drop them and then swoop down and catch them and do this over and over again, giving their young the sense of the wonder of flight, which I can only presume, because I'm never jumping out of a plane, is a marvelous feeling of utter and complete powerlessness, while being a marvelous feeling of the energy of creation coursing over every fiber of your being. But since I despise the feeling of my stomach being in my mouth, I will never find out if I'm right. In Psalm 104, we get this tribute to this idea of there being a step you don't walk over. Now, we get this tribute to this idea of how wonderful it is to bask in the amazingness of creation and the amazingness of the wonders of all that has been wrought with that initial tohu vabohu, formless void, creative potential from which all that draws breath comes. It doesn't have to always be about nature. We had a few weeks ago Claudette's service. Claudette Hodgkinson, beloved member of this congregation, wonderful gift of hospitality and the love of a parent, grandparent who was yours, whether you were of her blood or not. She knew we all came from one, and to one we all shall return with her. But we had a service, and the service had a wonderful reception afterwards, and it was a little extra special because it was like the first reception we'd had in 26 months. But one of the things that I wish that you all could see when that happens is if you slip into the kitchen, or if you arrive at 8 in the morning when our deacons and the leaders of our receptions, when Ruth and Tish and all the alls. If you've ever had a part in a memorial service reception, please stand up. If you don't stand up, I will call you out. Totally gonna happen. I know mostly who you are. Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, y'all were here. Graham, extraordinary hospitality person right now, signing up to do fellowship like you all should. Anyway, that's not my point, although it is a little bit a good point. I love getting here early or slipping into the kitchen, and you just watch them all work. And you realize this just doesn't come out of nothing, but these people, everything from high schoolers to folks who every once in a while are like, I don't know what to give them to do. And I say, just give them napkins, and they can hand out napkins, right? And they're all working in a common cause. And truth be told, some of them are people I find a little cranky. None of you, of course. But for a moment, all that passes away. And I'm caught up in the awe of the beautifulness of community, of the ecclesia. And we have these moments, right? We're looking out and we're listening and we're hearing and we're speaking, and it's all working nicely, right? And then what happens next? Somebody says they're really all just drunk. And then you have to do the dishes. Yes. Everything's amazing, but we've gotten to a point where we imagine it's some extra special spiritual gift to pour shade on that, to figure out where's the place of complaint, where's the viral place to figure out why it's not amazing and what's really wrong, to fixate not on the wonder of the world, but to break it down, to steal that joy. I think there's a really neat thing that happens. I was at a workshop years ago on this text. They used this text. The workshop wasn't on it. But, and they said, is Pentecost a miracle of speaking or a miracle of hearing? Is the miracle, is the Spirit making them all speak the same tongue, or is the miracle making them all hear it in their tongue? And if you know well, if you have learned nothing from me, you know the answer to that is yes. Yes, thank you. Given a binary of this or this, the answer is yes, right? But hear that in the text, right? So it's very clear in the beginning, it says, and the Spirit was in them. The room became oppressively full of the energy of the Spirit, right? Andrew was humming and it was driving you crazy because they forgot to turn off his microphone. That's not what the person who texted me said, by the way, but it would drive me crazy. And all of this is just like that sense of it getting ready to burst at the seams, right? But then it says, if you listen to the text, every other time it talks about what they heard. Each of us hears them in our own language, in our native tongues. And this is a group of Galileans. And if we're going to read this right scripturally, we should say, they're just Galileans, right? Trying to think, what people can I offend? They're just from Hidden Springs. Sorry, Lonnie, you were right there. I don't know. Anyway, and so it's not just the like, why are we all hearing this in our own language? It's like, and why even more so from this group of people, right? Who shouldn't be capable of this. They're not educated and worldly enough to know all our languages. So how is it that we're hearing them in our own language? And I love the idea that it takes a miracle on both sides, right? Because it takes a miracle on both sides. We have to be willing to allow the Spirit to speak wonder and imagination through us, but we've also got to be willing to listen to someone else's speaking imagination and wonder before we decide they're just drunk. So the joy of this moment is that you had this people and they were going nowhere, right? I mean, this is the group of 12 who has kept locking themselves away in the upper room. This is the 12 that went to hide fishing because they didn't know what to do now that Jesus was gone. This is the 12 that sat staring up into the heavens like, is he coming back? Right? There's zero energy to them. And if we're honest, not a whole lot of training to be equipped to create a worldwide, generationally long movement of faith. And then all of a sudden, like a spark, they get moving. And like a still pond with no movement, a rock is dropped in the middle. And can't you just see the ripples spreading out from it? And so here the Spirit drops and it explodes outward in this movement of joy and wonder and awe, of speaking and listening and of letting our skepticism and our cynicism fall down at our feet and be left in the wake of our passing as we give an ode to the joy and amazingness of God's creation, the love that gave us birth and calls us home and unites us, each and every one of us, to the heartbeat of all creation. And you can just how are we tapping in or allowing God's Spirit to tap into us with that kind of wonder and love? Or are we the guys in the crowd saying, no, they're just drunk? You know, we Presbyterians tend to be associated a little bit more with the latter than the former. On this Pentecost Sunday, on this wear red Sunday, on this moment in which we're trying to allow ourselves to be open to the movement of the potential energy of God's Spirit in us and through us. Where is God sending you to marvel in the wonders of creation? What is God inviting you to listen to? And what is God inviting you to speak on God's behalf? This is Pentecost. Happy birthday, y'all. Amen.